Yeah.
All right, yeah. Ooh, jam it, baby. Yeah. All right, yeah. Hi, this is the Mr. Poe and Mr. Stock Show. I'm Mr. Poe, this is Mr. Stock, and this is the show in general. That was our theme song, and our violinist. We have a violinist on the show who's trying to jam, but unfortunately, it's really hard to follow Mr. Stock on the banjo, isn't it?
A little bit.
Yeah, I'm a very good player, and it's hard to keep up. So, but I appreciate the effort, and welcome to the show. Welcome to the show, folks.
It's almost impossible to follow you.
Like my co-host said, Mr. Edgar Allan Poe IV, we do have two very talented guests. In fact,
I never said that.
we do.
Did I say that?
We
I
do
said we
have
had a
two.
violin
We said
player.
we had two guests.
Did
and
I
I
say
just
that?
threw in talented. We
No,
had
I didn't say that either. I just said we had a violinist.
We do have a violin player.
That's what I said.
On the
There
show.
you go.
And we might as well
All right,
go
now
ahead
he's
and
got it.
introduce Mr. Hugo Martinez, who plays, not only does he play violin, but he plays a funny-looking violin.
It
And
looks incomplete. Hold that up. Where's the rest of that violin? Did you get a reduced price for that? Because you certainly get your money's worth there.
Actually, on a computer service, I had heard about this violin. Then I saw it in an ad in the magazine, and I ordered it.
You ordered that from a magazine?
I ordered it from the magazine.
You didn't even know what it sounded like.
Well, it's a solid body violin, so they're pretty much generic in the sound.
Oh.
Well, let's talk about that further later on in the show, but we have another guest in the studio, Nicholas the Storyteller. And Nicholas, what happened to your last name? Is it the Storyteller, your last name?
When I was born, they didn't care much about last names.
Yes, and when were you born?
1520.
1520, that makes you 15,200.
old.
Don't try it.
Very old, Mr.
Yes, yes.
200 years old. That must explain.
Don't strain
Experienced.
yourself with the math.
Experience.
There's
yes.
no accounting for experience.
You also, it seems like you got caught in a time warp because your clothing.
Dressed very strangely.
Your clothing
Yeah.
is that indicative of when you were growing up?
This is what I always wear.
Styles have changed, though, Nick. I mean, you know, times have changed. This is a little out of fashion. What can
Thank
I
you for
say?
letting me know.
Yes.
Just thought I'd like. This is what folks are wearing today.
Oh, my model.
Well, what is interesting?
This is the hip outfit of today.
being that you're so old, it's nice that you could still find work. I guess storytelling is kind of fits your niche right there.
Well, in the amount of time that I've spent on this planet, I've done a number of things, but storytelling is the latest.
Well, let's spend some time with you first. Tell me some of your things you've done on this planet.
Oh, let's see. I worked as a warrior.
Mm-hmm. Do you remember what war it was?
Several,
Uh-huh.
yes.
Where were you born? That's
I was born in
passive
England.
guy.
in England.
Yes, in a little town called Tintagel.
Mm-hmm.
You lost your accent.
Oh yes, I've had many accents in my life.
Tintagel, that's King Arthur, right? Did you know
There
him?
is a story that he was born there. Yes.
Did you know him?
No. He was before my time.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I said I
15,
didn't.
20, 400.
You look kind of old. It's hard to. I'm sorry. Of course, he's.
But during my time, King Arthur was very popular.
Oh.
We loved stories of King Arthur.
Oh.
And indeed, if we have a chance, I perhaps mention. a little
No,
bit.
don't bother. It's okay.
Well, so you obviously do a lot of storytelling around town,
Yeah.
and well, might as well start with one. What's one of your favorite stories?
Well, I gave it a lot of thought as to what I might tell today, and somebody mentioned that this was a rather humorous show, and so I immediately
Wait.
considered.
Who told you that?
I don't know. Somebody told me that. But somebody said that a humorous story might be good,
Okay.
and I thought very hard about the various Viking stories. But the most humorous thing to Vikings is lutefisk, so I don't know whether that would be a very good story to tell. You know what lutefisk is?
Weren't the Vikings before your time too?
Oh, yes.
Oh.
But one of my ancestors was.
Oh. No, we don't know that.
You don't know what lutefisk?
No.
Okay. Lutefisk is a kind of fish. It's a white fish, and it's treated with lye to preserve it, you see. Who would want to eat fish treated with lye?
Exactly.
Exactly. And there's one story about that, the Irish, you see, the Vikings invaded Ireland at one point in history. And there's one story that the Irish were trying to kill the Vikings and put lye in their fish. And of course, the Vikings liked it.
That's funny.
Yeah, that's good. All right. Okay. That's
Well,
is that the first? That's the fun. That's the story.
Well, the only other remotely funny story about from the Norse, you see, is the story of how Thor got his hammer back.
How did he? God, speaking of Thor, I mean, that's great because we have cartoon characters right here on the desk. Veronica here, and the Hulk.
Yes.
But we don't have a Thor. But
No
that's
Thor?
okay. Do you have a Hulk story or a Veronica story you could tell us?
No.
Okay, well, we'll settle for Thor then.
I do have a short story about a young maid in Ireland, though.
Well, how did Thor get his hammer back?
Hey, yeah, how did he get that hammer
Well,
back?
first of all, he lost it because a giant stole it from his house while he was out carousing at one of the many parties in Valhalla. And when he found out that his hammer was missing, of course, he immediately thought of his brother Loki, the troublemaker. And he went to Odin, the one with one eye.
Oh, yeah,
yes. And he said, Loki has done something to take my hammer away. And Odin called Loki and said, you're going to get his hammer back. And Loki found out where the hammer was.
But he never took the hammer.
No, he didn't do it. But he was he understood all these things because he was a troublemaker. You know.
So, okay, he took responsibility even though...
Not really,
No.
but he went and he found out in the form of a bird where the hammer was, sitting beside a giant in his court in a big box. And Odin said, we want you to go get the hammer. And Thor, of course, was, I'm going to get the hammer. And Odin said, which eye was it? This one?
No, it was the other one.
No, Thor, you must not go without your hammer, or the giants will kill you. Oh, well, so Loki had to take him and said, I know of only one way that we can get his hammer back, and that's if he dresses up in his mother's clothing, and I offer him as a bride to the giant.
So wait a minute, we got Loki dressed like a bird.
No.
Yeah.
He's wearing a bird costume, and now Thor is in drag.
Right.
Okay, all right, I got it.
Now, Thor didn't like that very much.
No.
No.
Because he was a macho guy.
Right,
Yeah.
definitely. Me wear my mother's dress? You know, and but he put it on because he really wanted to get his hammer back. And so Loki took him to the giant and introduced him as a goddess who wanted to marry the giant. And, oh yeah, the giant. So oh yes, I'd love to marry them, beautiful. And of course Thor is turning red at this point, you know.
And that turned the giant on even more. He liked
Oh,
it
yeah,
feisty.
he loved it.
Oh, yeah, feisty wench.
So Loki said, well, in order to marry her, you must perform the ceremony of the hammer. The hammer? Yeah, what's this? Well, you put your hammer in her lap. And that proves to her that you will take good care of her the rest of her life. And so, the giant, hammer? Loki says, you have a hammer, don't you? Oh, yeah. He reaches into the box and pulls out Thor's hammer and puts it in Thor's lap. Of course, that was a big mistake.
Then what happened?
You can guess.
I'm on the edge of my seat. Well,
You can
actually,
guess. Thor took the hammer and he killed every giant in sight.
Oh.
Kaboom, 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 kaboom. All right? Now, the only other part of the story that I have to tell really is that there was a great party that night because Thor got his hammer back. And everybody was happy except for one person. Can you guess who the one person was?
The giant.
No, he's dead.
He's dead.
Well, he wasn't happy then, right? Somebody else wasn't happy.
Somebody
Okay.
else wasn't happy.
Who?
I don't know.
Don't know. The Odin.
Thor's mama.
Oh, because he took her clothes.
You should have seen the mess.
Had to take it to the dry cleaners and blood all over the place.
Well,
Actually,
Nicholas, well,
Yeah, that's what the Vikings thought was funny.
that is a good one. That is a
Yeah.
good one. Actually, it wasn't on the edge of my seat because since Mr. Stock insists on sitting on a phone book, I didn't want to look like a midget next to him. I'd rather look like a giant. So I had to sit on a phone book too. So I was on the edge of my phone
well,
book.
Nicholas, we have centuries of catching up to do, but we do have another guest, so
Right.
we'll get back to you in just a moment. The other guest, Hugo. Well, Nicholas is centuries year old, and here you are with like an ultra-modern violin, and you have some equipment that's really fascinating. If we could look at that just for a moment, is that necessary for your playing?
Yeah, pretty much. It's kind of like pretend the computer is like the piano roll, and the sound module over here is the piano, and that's how it's actually controlled.
Oh, so when you play violin, it's not just you; it's you play with all this
Yeah,
equipment.
the violin is strictly the violin, but the violin is like the rest of the stuff is like my band, my traveling band.
Well, that's pretty convenient. So
Right.
you have to split it up with just yourself, all the money you make, and
That's it.
That's pretty convenient.
You know, this show is sponsored by the Folk Club, and so it's good that we get all these folkies in, huh, Mr. Stock? Doesn't seem too folky.
Not a very folky guy.
He's got a folky computer over there.
Yeah.
Travels around, carries around an old beat-up suitcase.
Was this part of? Are you a educated musician?
I started classical,
Yes.
privately.
Was the electronics part of your training?
Not at all.
No?
I started out as a hobby.
Uh-huh. And then now it's an integral part of your playing.
Yeah, I just grew into that, you know.
Do you ever play your old classical stuff?
Not recently, no. I've just totally immersed myself in this.
Well, I'm kind of curious.
You want him to waste his money on all that electronic stuff, Mr. Stock, and just go back to playing an acoustic?
Well, it seems to me it would be a lot simpler just to play your old acoustic violin, but like you say, it's you can't play as a band with just your.
Well, I'm not the typical violinist, like strolling violinist and playing symphonies. Actually, when I was a kid, I wanted to play the trumpet or saxophone. And, you know, as a poor immigrant child, I had to rent the instrument from the schools. And they were out of their instruments. They said, well, we got violins, Hugo. So I picked the violin, and I've been trying to do kind of like a hybrid.
Well, I'm really curious to see where it
You're
sounds
obviously
like.
not a poor immigrant anymore with all that electronic stuff.
No, no, this country has been
Well, since
excellent to
Mr.
me.
Poe brought it up, where did you immigrate from?
Cuba,
And
1961.
So you moved here as a little boy, and
Yeah.
and you studied music here, obviously, as well.
Oh, yeah.
Were your parents musically inclined?
My mother sang in Cuba
Oh, good.
sometimes.
So I'm sure she encouraged your.
Actually, no.
No, she wasn't. Well, we'll pursue that in a moment. First, I'd like
I wanted
to
him to
kind
get a
of,
real job, Mr. Stock.
I'm kind of curious to see what you sound like here.
Should I turn on the button?
Oh, it's just a button that you need. Well, I could
Well,
do
I got
that.
it all set up to make things easy.
Yeah, nothing's going to
Here
blow
it
up.
goes. Let's see if it sounds on.
Hugo, that accompaniment there was so full. Why'd you even bother to play the violin?
Really?
Just put that on the tape. Now, one thing about that, you don't have to worry about the bass player missing a beat or.
Oh yeah, I'm not showing up to the gig, you know.
Do you play much around town?
I've begun to.
Mm-hmm.
I've been playing at Penrod's and Torres, and I just did I was opening act for New York Voices over at the Musicians Exchange
Oh,
for
excellent.
Lauderdale.
And so, getting back to what you brought up before, your mother didn't even like you playing classical violin?
Well, yes and no. It was the popular part of it that she didn't, you know, she would have been happy if I'd just been a classical violinist in a big string orchestra. And actually for a while I tried to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of a big identity thing. I just didn't fit in.
How does she take to your playing now?
Now she likes it.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Well, she tells you she likes it now.
No, she sees that I can actually get this thing rolling on the ground and everything.
You're bringing some money in. You're
Yeah.
bringing money. Oh, yeah.
Hey,
That's the same thing.
gotta survive, you know?
Well, Nicholas, did you ever think that in your lifetime you would see music come to this?
It is most amazing indeed.
Who are some of your favorite musicians throughout history?
Oh, well, going back a little bit, Mozart, I always liked Mozart.
Yeah.
Were you a friend of Mozart's?
I met him briefly, but he was very busy.
Oh, well, he didn't live for long, so
No,
he had to
no.
pack a lot of those writing into a short period of time.
I noticed that you also picked up a musical instrument as well. What's the?
Yes,
when did you? Who
I-
turned you onto the bodhrán here?
I
Is that what you call it?
Play this sometimes when I tell a story, like, to emphasize.
Do you have another story to tell us about someone in another man in drag story, maybe?
Well, no, there is a short one I could tell.
Okay.
I might mention my program.
Yeah, I was going to
Go
mention
right
that because
ahead.
it seems to me that with all the stories you have throughout the hundreds of years, it must be hard to get them all in.
Oh, yeah.
So Nicholas does have his own cable access program. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Channel 35. It's called Ancient Tales. And on the program, I try to bring in a few guests too, but mainly I tell stories.
Are your guests as good as our guests? I mean, like
Unfair.
let's say the guest today, for instance,
Unfair.
couldn't possibly be as good, right?
Well, I'll tell our audience that Ancient Tales, Nicholas the Storyteller's show, is on this channel Mondays at 7:30 in the evening, Wednesdays at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and Fridays at 10 o'clock in the morning. And we just have a short time left. How about a short little
A short
tale?
story.
Yeah.
Very good. Okay. There was a young lass who was passing near her home one day, and she passed a lake. And in the middle of the lake, there was a duck. And the duck saw her and swam into land and walked up to her brazen as can be and said, "Now you may think that I'm a duck, but in fact, I'm a prince. I was changed to the likeness you see before you by a wicked witch. Oh," she says, "is there anything I might do to help you, my lord?" And he says, "As a matter of fact, there is. If you but take me home with you and put me upon your pillow this night, I shall become a prince once again, and the spell will be broken." And she did. Ah, yes, she put him on her pillow that night, and in the morning he was a prince. And now I ask you, Mr. Poe, what? Do you believe me story?
Not a whit.
Neither did her parents.
We have something in common. Something you have in common. One thing you and Thor don't have in common. He didn't want to wear a dress, but I see you have no problem with dressing
This
up in women's
is
clothing.
appropriate clothing for my period, I'll have you know.
Oh.
Yes.
Oh, well then Thor was from the same period. What was his problem? How come
Thor
he
was
didn't want
much
to dress-
earlier.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I know his story because he came before me.
Do you use the modern conveniences of the telephone and the electricity? Do you mind all those?
Oh, I love them. Just because I'm old doesn't mean I'm old-fashioned.
It's too bad none of your friends throughout your history could enjoy these times with you.
I have a few.
Oh,
Friends?
Yes,
Okay.
friends. As a matter of fact, in one of my programs in the near future, I'll be interviewing a friend from the Norman court.
Well, that sounds interesting. So again, Norman.
Do you take vitamins? How do you guys last so long? What's the secret?
It's all an attitude.
Attitude. All right.
Yes.
Great.
Okay.
Nicholas the Storyteller has a show on Cable Tap as well, Channel 35. Check your listings. And also, getting back to Hugo, was that tune you played original tune? Did you
That
write
was
that?
an original, yes.
Do you do a lot of original tunes?
Slowly. I input them through the keyboard, and I'm not really a keyboard player, so I have to do a lot of editing later in the computer. One of my ambitions is to get what they call a MIDI violin.
A MIDI?
Yeah,
That's
actually
with more space, more
well,
wood?
it's
That's all.
basically the little thing on here is different, and it hooks up directly to the computer. So as I'm playing, the notes are in there, and it's a more flowing, natural way of composing for me.
That's pretty interesting. I was watching the monitor while you were playing, and there was a lot of close-ups on you. Very nice, but I was waiting for the close-up of your computer because that was a pretty much
half
part
the
of
show.
your.
Yeah, but it just sits there. You know?
Yeah.
But there's lights flashing. And
Yeah, that's true.
Hugo, we're almost out of time. How about another song
Another
before
one?
before we have to say goodbye?
Sure.
Get a
let
close-up
me-
of that. What are you doing with the computer there?
Right
It's,
now, I'm loading up another tune.
I'm just
right
listening.
there.
Incredible.
Let's see, there it is.
Well, while you're loading that up, maybe we should talk about our recent article. Are you done?
Yep, done already.
All right. No, go ahead.
Okay.
If we have time, we'll
This one is half original and half my ex-band leader. Fito Foster is his name.